guys, it's Always Improving here, and today I'm going to be doing the Limited Palettes Challenge, the second edition of that from Arlibine here on YouTube. I'll link her channel down below along with her video of this same color palette challenge. And I actually did the first one as well. That one was using a blue and an orange color, and it was really interesting and I really liked how that turned out. But I have a video on that if you'd like to see it. For the second video in her series, and for mine as well, she used a rose color and an emerald color. Specifically, she used some Magello Mission Gold paints. She used Quinacridone Permanent Rose, a PV19 pigment, and she also used Viridian, which is a PG7 pigment. She remarks how these pigments are jewel-toned and in general, they were pretty vibrant colors, but when mixed together, they really made some good neutral purplish gray colors, and I'm going to try to find that within my own paint selection because I personally do not have any Magello Mission Gold paints. Now, I do have two of the colors, well, the two colors she mentioned in a Daniel Smith, a Quinacridone Rose color, and a Phthalo Green from Turner's, and these are single pigment tubes with those exact pigments she mentioned. So I'm going to test these out for this comparison. I'm also going to be using two mixture greens. I'm not sure how they'll work out, but it's going to be Hooker's Green right here and this Undersea Green. But I think I'll end up using these two. I just want to see how these react for a bit of fun and comparison's sake. So after swatching each of the four colors, I began mixing each of the three greens with that rose color, and I think my initial washes were a little bit too light. I used a lot of water and not enough pigment to really get a good comparison and a good mixture of the two. But that third row of swatches for the rose and the phthalo green were so pretty. I loved the cool grays and almost a blue color that I could get with those two colors, and I was really surprised because it was a green and a pink I was mixing. But even so, it was, I don't know, it was really surprising. It was really pretty too. For the other two mixes, I did like the last mixture I did more than the second one because the second one felt like they were a little lackluster colors and just too neutralizing. The last swatching and mixing that I did was really interesting, and I thought it got some nice red browns into it. So after all that testing and debating, I do think I'm going to still go with the Phthalo Green and the Quinacridone Rose. While these color mixes are pretty, I think these ones are more true to the original, and I really like them together. So I'm going to be using Quinacridone Rose and Phthalo Green Blue shade from Daniel Smith and Turner Watercolor respectively. And finally, after swatching out all those colors, I can begin working on an idea for what I wanted to do with this piece. The blue shades that I got from that mixture in the beginning really inspired me to make some sort of landscape. So I sketched out a little thumbnail and did some colors before moving on to a bit larger of a sketchbook so I could get a more detailed work. Here you can see me doing a interesting composition technique that I learned from Andrew Loomis's, Creative Illustrations. I'm not sure if I'll continue to do it, but it was kind of interesting to try for this landscape sketching piece. But after that, I was able to transfer my ideas over to watercolor paper. So the concept for this piece is really simple. It's just a girl who's in a pool of water with a waterfall. I immediately was drawn to a waterfall, and I thought I'd put a character in it just to give it a little more focus, and I enjoy drawing people, so that's why I did that. And I ended up doing some sort of sunset in the mountains, and I thought it would be really interesting to try to do a landscape for these two colors because of the blue and green, the blue and green tones that I could mix. Based upon my initial thumbnail sketch where I did some colors, I decided to make the water, obviously the blue mixture, so I wanted it to lean a little more green, and that sort of led me to making her skin more of a really light pink tone. This allowed me to focus on the landscape without adding too much detail into the skin and into the character in general, while also balancing the blue tones and the green tones that would be around her. So she's more of the warmer like character in the piece, and the other cooler characters are the landscape and the rocks and the water, which kind of balances each other out. My initial washes went down smoothly for the most part. I wasn't really sure where I was going with this. Again, this was pretty different from my normal style, and I'm really trying to branch out from it. So this was really fun to experiment with and add a lot of different elements that I normally wouldn't do into this. But yeah, again, this is on a nice paper where the colors went down pretty smoothly at first. It's on Fluid 100 cold pressed watercolor paper, if you're wondering, but all of my initial layers went down smoothly, and I was able to get a good value shift for most of the first layer. After laying down the initial layer for my watercolors, I did think about using some masking fluid for the sky, because I wanted to do some sort of warmer toned, because I felt like all of the foreground was really blue besides the character, so I wanted to add the background in with a nice warm colored sunset. But for that I would still need like clouds, and I would need the sun to be more of a white color. So originally I was going to use some masking fluid, but later on you'll see me take that off as I didn't really like it, and I thought that I could make some clouds better even if I didn't put masking fluid down, so I only kept it where the sun needed to be. Otherwise, details included adding a lot of layers to the rock near the waterfall. That really did take a lot of layers to get a value so dark that I was happy with. And what else did I do during this stage? I'm really working on building up a lot of variation, because with these two colors, even though they mixed beautifully together, it's really hard to get a lot of that variation that I love in a watercolor piece with only those two colors and two hues that you have to work with. So the main focus was trying to get very different values in a lot of areas so you could still build up that variation. To add a little more warmth into this image, I did add some little red flowers into the piece, along with a sort of red glow on a lot of those background mountains, because I thought that the sunset would obviously make some sort of light onto them. So I tried to cast sort of a pinkish hue on the side of them. I think it brought the piece together just a little bit more. And I also added more warmth to the sky in the background, which also helped kind of unify the background and the foreground with the character. About there, I was happy with the hues of the piece and most of the colors and where they were laid down. So I moved on into adding a lot more value and a lot more detail to this image, and that included adding some detailing onto the leaves and bushes, and adding that really deep blue-gray color to the mountains in the background and in the foreground. I thought that really allowed me to get, again, that variation and really high contrast image. I also added some detailing on the hair of the character in the foreground before moving into smaller details on her face, including her eyelashes, her eyebrows, and I even added a little bit more warm tones onto her face, including her nose and her cheeks, and I felt like that allowed me to more so balance out the really cool tones of the actual landscape surrounding her. A lot of the finer details near the end of this piece really helped bring the piece together, for me at least. I think that adding some of the textures that I did to the mountains, those like streaky lines, really helped give some interest to the different layers of this piece, and also fixing those like leaves near the pond that she is in. I think that helped also bring some depth and some texture into this image. I also added a lot more red. As I'm saying, I think that my original idea had a lot of blue in it, a lot more cool tones, and I think that by adding those pink colors back into it, I was really able to unify the piece more. Overall, this piece was really fun, and although I don't think it was perfect and there were a lot of mistakes that I could have fixed early on and even later in the process, it was a really fun experiment and a really fun piece to work on, and I think that this is what I need. I need to experiment more, I need to make more art, I just need to do what I feel like is good for me and good for my creative process right now to get out all those bad artworks that I talked about already and move on into a new stage in my art journey. And that is why this piece, I really like it, because the process was fun. Not necessarily the final image was perfect, but it's good because I enjoyed making it. Okay guys, that's gonna do it, and I really hope you enjoyed watching this process. It was a really fun challenge, and I think that it was an interesting point for me to work on, an interesting project for me, creatively speaking. So again, I hope you enjoyed watching the video. Thanks for sticking around, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!